So welcome everyone to a call of the chair meeting, which I have called because we wanted to accelerate the work that we were doing based on a meeting that 3 out of 4 members had about a month and a half ago. And we have some motions and some requests for the staff that we'd like to bring forward in advance of our scheduled meeting in May. So I guess I call this meeting to order at this time at 3 p.m. and 55 minutes. And I think the first thing we have to do is approve the agenda. And I think I can move that we approve the agenda for today's meeting. Seconder?
I'll second.
Doug seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Andrea. I have Andrea prompting me because I always forget the steps in being a chair. And then I think we have minutes to approve from the last time. So we have minutes from our January meeting to approve. So I move that we approve the minutes from January. Does anyone? Oh, thank you. Okay. So, oh, yes. So I do the new member first? Okay. Excuse me, everybody. First of all, I would like to introduce our new member, Francis. Is it Francis or
Yes,
Francois?
Francis.
Francis Lapointe. And he is joining us and has an amazing background. And also, I think we would like to welcome you. And I think he has to disclose potential pecuniary interest, conflict of interest.
Okay.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest or potential conflict of interest to declare?
No.
No? Okay. So we will move forward to approving the minutes from the January meeting. I move that we approve the minutes. Seconder? Francis seconds. Everybody in favor? Oh, he wasn't there. So it has to be Doug or...
Okay, I'll do it.
George seconds. Everyone in favor? So moved. Motion carried.
Oh, this.
So we just have to go through, so there's no public input, no
Okay.
delegations.
Okay. So there's no public input, delegations, or correspondence. So next we move to, sorry, yeah, I have a different one. Next we move to staff reports, and I understand that Caleb has a property tax rebate program report for us. So that is the next item on our agenda. Thanks, Caleb.
Hi, Chair. Nice to meet you. My name is Caleb Janelle, and I'm the Director of Finance here. With me is Ryan Beamer, our Supervisor of Taxation. Together, we worked on this report. And so I'll just give you a bit of background as to why we're here and why this report's on the agenda. So the last council meeting, we had a public member have a public deputation discussing their heritage property and that they were looking for financial assistance. There was some more detailed background. You could always reach out to them to find out more. In discussion with them, we knew there was multiple avenues. You can establish a grant program, you can establish a community improvement plan under the Municipal Act, and you can use the tool called the Heritage Rebate Program to incentivize, subsidize kind of grant funding to heritage properties. Council gave direction specifically to staff to look into the Heritage Tax Rebate Program. So this is a piece under the Municipal Act that allows us to basically incentivize by rebating a percentage of the property taxes we charge on heritage properties. This is a similar program, very similar in design to what we have as a charity rebate program. So charities, if they submit information recognizing themselves as charity, we can then process a rebate for them. Each municipality can choose whether to enact or not enact that rebate program. Currently, we do not have the heritage rebate. We do have the charity. It can also decide whether it wants to provide a 10% up to 40% incentive off of the property taxes. Currently, the charity rebate in Quinte West is at 40%. essentially, we were tasked with putting this report together, letting council know what it looks like, and having them make the ultimate decision if they would like to create this program, how they could budget for it. But the reason we're here is because it does directly affect the Heritage Advisory Committee and what its goal is or purpose is in terms of incentivizing these properties. So we're really looking for feedback, anything we want to add, any specific motions of this advisory group to council on this program, whether it's supported, not supported, what percentage, and if there's kind of any questions or about the details of this program, now would be a great time to ask myself or Mr. Beamer.
Does this rebate only apply to the, I think it's only 7 designated heritage properties? Is it just for those properties, or is it any property that goes, I'm 100 years old, I deserve a...
Yeah, good question. So yeah, in the report, we talk a bit about the requirements. So I'm just trying to find it. Eligibility criteria under the comments and analysis section. So to qualify, a property must be designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. So those 7 properties you mentioned, be subject to an agreement between the property owner and the city, and be in compliance with municipal bylaws, property standards, and maintenance requirements. So those are a gist of the overall requirements. We would, of course, create a more detailed bylaw and procedure once council approves. If council approves, we would then have a more sufficient policy. But no, it would only apply to those who are in good standing with this committee.
If I may, I'm familiar with the program, the Heritage Easement Program, and the taxation rebate, primarily the city of Markham. And just wondering if you're looking to implement it. The original goal would be to encourage homeowners to allow their building to be designated or volunteer to have their building designated. And then usually with the Heritage Easement Agreement, there are conditions. So for example, the city of Markham says that they must provide photographs to the committee once a year to record the condition of the building. Once a building is designated, there's already lots of protections in place to prevent alterations that shouldn't be required. I think my question would be, if we're going to proceed with this, are we only going to permit it for buildings that are currently not designated as an incentive to allow them to be designated? Or is it going to be applicable across the board for any designated building? Has that come up as a question yet, or?
Yeah, good question, because you're talking to the finance people, and really in terms of the scope of the advisory committee and the staffing and administrative requirements of, taking in pictures and requiring certain proof of how the savings are spent on the rebate. That's really, I'm going to leave up that to staff in the committee. We simply have a program, and I think keeping the pieces very easy for us to administer. So we would basically require that they've registered, and so in that sense, there's an incentive for these properties that aren't registered to register so they can get the rebate. And then basically, as long as they're in good standing and we don't hear anything different from staff or the advisory committee, they would receive this on an annual basis.
I think there's also discussions in the report about whether it be sort of a rebate at the end of the year or a reduction in taxes during the period. I know of a couple instances where property owners chose not to apply for the rebate because they felt that the heritage easement agreement was going to be onerous, and that dumbfounded me because, again, under the Heritage Act, once your building is designated, the rules and policies are there on what you can and cannot do to your building, at least on the exterior. So I think we would want to make sure that everyone understood what are the consequences of the rebate. If you're going to get a rebate, these are the things you must do. And just the fact that either we approach property owners and say, we'd like to designate your building, we'd like to do so and offer you this rebate through a heritage easement, et cetera. It's not necessary, I guess is my point, because if the community chooses to designate a building under the Heritage Act, we can, if this committee wants to do that. I know that in Prince Edward County right now, they've listed buildings and they're suggesting to those property owners they're asking them if they want their building designated, and if a property owner says no, they kind of put it aside. Whereas I'm working in the city of Markham, and because the rules have changed with the government recently, with Bill 23, they have over 500 properties that they're chasing after to get designated, whether the owners want it or not. And I'm actually involved in cases that have gone to the OLT where we're opposing designation of buildings. So I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're not going against what property owners' wishes are. But at the same time, I think our role as a committee and the community is to protect heritage buildings. I see a lot of buildings in this community that should be designated that aren't designated. So I think we have to balance that. And I think this incentive is a great thing, this tax incentive. I think we just got to iron out the details, I guess, a little bit more.
Can I ask for clarification from the finance side? So this, I think you're referencing an easement agreement. Is this something we have in place now? We don't? Is this more of a suggestion from the member here that an easement agreement would be a good thing to have with this program?
So I read that you wanted to put a heritage easement in place. They're not necessary. The heritage easements came to the light, I guess, or started to be implemented when buildings were not designated. It was a way to protect a building that wasn't designated through a heritage easement. It's actually in some ways more powerful than designation because it gets to the very heart of the matter, the details, etc. So in theory, a heritage easement agreement is not necessary. You could just simply say, okay, well, every building that's designated will get a tax rebate. So why are we asking for a heritage easement, right, is what I'm asking, I guess, in some ways, too.
No, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, so Mr. Beamer, just looking at, there's, under the Municipal Act, 3 options for the agreement, and the third one is an agreement between the property owner and the local municipality respecting the preservation and maintenance. So that's the other 2 mention an easement agreement. The third one says there's an agreement but doesn't specify easement agreement. So I think if that's what you're reaching to, and I think we're open to that, is using that third requirement, that as long as there's an agreement, which is pretty loose, then we can use that as opposed to an official easement agreement. Does that make sense to staff as well on the other side?
I think the difference with a heritage easement is that there would be, the easement is recorded on title. That's what makes it different. And the conditions are maintain your property or else you don't get the tax rebate. That's really what it comes down to.
My understanding, the first 2 options with the easement carry indefinitely, whereas the third one can cease to exist if the property owners change, because the agreement is between the municipality and the owner. Yeah. For the properties that are listed that we have currently 8, is that what we have designated currently with those 8 properties? No agreement?
So maybe we'll take this offline with staff and we'll figure out if there is a sort of agreement we can establish once we designate properties so that they could qualify for this program. It should be a pretty straightforward agreement.
I can get you an example from Markham.
Great. Yeah.
Any other comments or suggestions, questions?
I would love to hear what the committee thinks in terms of the amount, the percentage. Caleb mentioned 10 up to 40%.
I think that owning a heritage house now and knowing the cost of renovations, that whether it's 10% or 40%, it won't make much of a difference. Our costs have far exceeded that already. And I think it would be fair to say that any property owners who have a heritage building, the costs today are way more than what 40% of taxes might be. So I would think 40% would be fair if that's what's happening with the charities.
Do we know what the average is in other municipalities where they have a program like this?
Sorry, I didn't look into that. I just specifically applied it and quantified it based on for our municipality. Sorry,
Chair, I'll just mention, because we did look, There's a variety, I did put a bit of description in the report. Kingston provides a rebate of 40%. Peterborough requires a fee to apply, a $250, $450 fee to apply, and then you can get the rebate. Then you have kind of the CIP grants, hybrid. Some do both, some do just the grants, so that you can obviously increase the incentive based on a specific project. But yeah, it's a mixed bag out there. There's a lot of variation. But yeah, the one I did find there with Kingston was 40%.
Thank you. I mean, 40% sounds reasonable to me, given the cost of maintaining and renovating a heritage home. I agree with Francis. I think that sounds fine to me. I think anything less than that would probably not be a significant enough sum of money to be an incentive for anyone. I'm wondering what everyone else thinks.
I guess I agree with you. Oh, I turned it off, sorry. Technology, come on. Yeah, I think the 40%'s the reasonable enough number. You're right, it probably won't defer too much of the expense that somebody puts into a heritage home. It's not a simple thing to upkeep like my house, for example. And I think we should encourage this. Now, I guess our challenge is, what if everybody in Quinte West decides to apply for this status? What's going to be our process? Is the committee going to ultimately decide who is entitled to the 40%? Or I think that's the process we need to look at during this conversation.
Well, if I'm understanding it correctly, a property would have to go through the process of being put on the list and then research and then being designated. So it certainly would be unlikely, it seems to me, that we would have an influx of people applying for this. And even if they did, there is certainly a process for weeding them out, which is, the job of staff and research and this committee. That's my understanding. I actually had another question. So there's tax relief, and then there's also a grant hybrid program. So could those be combined, or does it sort of add up to a similar amount?
Yeah, so we're kind of at step one of this committee, evaluating potential funding or granting. Now, we also have the tough issue of talking about what pot of money does this committee or does council give into this this initiative, right? And so I don't believe there is one. And so even this request going to council is, what pot of money is this coming out of, right? In terms of any type of hybrid, you could do, multiple this or that. And if you did a grant program, my guess is that it would probably cost more because it would be probably geared to the renovations. That's what I see in a lot of our other CIP. If we have a downtown CIP community incentive program for something, it's often much more than this financial impact. So if those are considerations of this advisory committee, it's a much more fulsome discussion and probably presentation to council requesting a significant amount of funding to initiate some of these these initiatives of this committee. If we go down that path, it's a bit more. Yeah.
Sorry, when you say that path, you mean further incentives on top of the tax relief?
Exactly. I think that when council recommended this incentive program, that's what we right now are planning to go back to council with. If the committee wanted us to go in a different direction, then there probably needs to be more staff time, more investigation, and more budget. Yeah.
It seems to me this is a good place to start. I think our questions are more just in terms of clarification, understanding what the future possibilities are. So what is required of us at this point? Is there anything that, or is this informational, or do we need to take another step?
I think it would be good to have the advisory committee officially, kind of with a motion, approve or recommend this program to council, and at the percentage that you mentioned, just with a vote, I think would probably suffice.
Does someone want to make a motion? Oh, you've got it? Oh, I'm sorry. Was not, okay, I apologize. Obviously I'm not as prepared as I should be with this. The committee recommends that council direct staff to develop a heritage tax rebate program of 40% rebate on property taxes and that staff prepare the required bylaws. Seconder?
I'll second it.
George seconds.
Unless-
All in favor? All in favor, unanimous, passed.
Thank you. We may step out now, but thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
I need to borrow this for a minute.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize we were going to be doing this at this meeting. I didn't apologize. It's okay. So this is the next part. Okay. Yes, so that, I was ready. That, I knew that.
Before council, do the people have to have a decision before council about that school project?
No, that's already,
When that's done, then
yeah,
that's
yeah.
separate.
The Wooler Schoolhouse?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Are they giving them a tax rebate?
Sorry, just having a little side conversation. So next on our agenda, we have two potential candidates for the list to go on to potentially the Municipal Heritage Registry. And we decided through conversations with the committee and perusal of the LACAC report and discussions with staff to begin research into 94 King Street, also known as Canterbury Hall, and 41 Dundas Street West as potential sites to be designated for the heritage list. So our motion is not necessarily at this point to put them on the list, the pre-list for the Municipal Heritage Registry, but to begin research into and to identify them as properties of interest. And so I'd like to move that we identify 94 King Street, Canterbury Hall, and 41 Dundas Street West for research and as potential candidates. Is there any discussion before we go ahead? Francis?
Yeah, I just want to understand the process. So under the Heritage Act, you can list a building or designate a building, and your description here today is that you want to start the process of considering listing the buildings, right? Okay. And who's going to do the research?
I believe that goes over to staff now. Davina
Yeah.
would be our researcher.
Through the chair, yeah, so I've actually looked into 94 King Street and 41 Dundas, just a preliminary, just to make sure that they do meet the criteria of Ontario, of the provincial, the Ontario regulation, and they both do, and I just want to make sure that we all know that we only have 2 years for them to go on the municipal register, and then they have a restriction of 5 years where they're not able to get back on the list. So, if we don't designate them in that time period.
Okay, so by doing this, we are putting them on the list and then it must be moved on to the Heritage Registry within 2 years? Is
Through
that
the chair,
like we're
yes.
at? Okay.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Please
So,
clarify.
So Bill 23 regulated that any building that was on a list, a registry, would have to be either designated by initially the January or December, it was either January 1st, 2025 or December 31st, 2024. And that spurred a lot of communities to having to decide to either take the buildings and designate them or list them. That regulation was extended by 2 years to 2027. So I think it's December 31st, 2026 or January 1st, 2027. So if you were to list a building today, tomorrow, whatever, you don't have 2 years, you just have to leave that period. So we're down to 16 months or something like that left.
So we don't
Kelly,
have,
did-
so Francis, just so you know, we don't have any that are listed. We have a LACAC list from the 80s, 90s, of properties just in Trenton proper, not within all of Quinte West. So we're using that list as pulling ones that we think we'd like to actually put on our municipal registry and then do further research to see if we can get it designated. Now, we have a lot of properties that already do have research attached to them that were done during that LACAC period that Davina is pulling from. We're not 100% sure if we need to do more research on them to actually get them designated. We caution the committee at that point because we're not experts in that and we don't have necessarily the resources to do that research. So that's a separate conversation I think that we would need to have. We've had chats with the committee previously in terms of sort of how we would go about asking council for funding for a researcher perhaps, or perhaps I know with your expertise, maybe there's some more conversation that can happen. So we don't have anything right now that is listed.
I'm actually wondering, now that we have Francis's expert voice on this committee, if we should take a step back and reconsider this and have some further discussions unofficially, the way that we did a month ago, about the direction that we should go in, and that I would like to withdraw that motion. Is everybody in favor of that, of withdraw? I don't know if they need to be in favor of withdrawing the motion, but I feel that given Francis's expertise, that there's more conversation to be had about this.
Maybe I can add some more information for the committee to, for this process. I'm familiar with the LACAC, I think, the documents. I had researched them for my own property and for another property recently. If the community wanted to list those properties now, you could do so with little sort of impact or little implications. I think there's probably a couple dozen of these documents. 50, yeah.
Not all of them have the same amount of research.
Right. So to be listed, you don't need much research. You just need some basic research. And then after that, you have to figure out whether the building complies with 2 of the 0-96 criterias, of the 9 criterias. And I am very familiar with those. I know them by heart now. Because I'm at DOLT and I'm fighting several buildings, against designation in certain cases. So I would love to help you guys out with all this process. And I agree, an informal meeting, perhaps looking at all these things and giving you my knowledge to date so far on this stuff. And I don't know whether these 2 properties need to be removed from this process now. Probably a good idea if you want to kind of rethink the whole thing.
So just to clarify, we have the LACAC list, we have the list, and then we have the registry. And so I think that we sometimes blur the conversation around the LACAC list and the list. And I think what we're talking about here is moving something onto the list and then having that time limit before it can be moved onto the registry. And so to back the conversation up, you're saying we only have until?
So any buildings that are on a list currently have until December 31st, 2026 to be designated. If a building is not on a list and is added to a list, I'd have to go back and look to see what the ax is on that item. Not sure if it, it sounds weird, but I don't think that the intent of the government, if we all want to understand what all this process is about, is to allow, is to build more homes faster act, right? So trying to make sure that there's no impediment to buildings being converted to housing or converted to more apartments and things like that. So I don't know why we would list it. Let's say, would it make sense to list a building on December 31st or 30th, knowing that we couldn't designate it by the 31st? So that doesn't make any sense to me. So I would think that the 2-year limitation, the extension of the 2-year, applies to buildings that were listed, and that if we wanted to put a building or designate a building, we don't need to list it. We can designate it immediately, right? So the listing is no.
Under the legislation, you have to list it first and then it gets designated. That's my understanding
yeah.
of that. And I
I've had
agree with-
arguments with another lawyer about this, and I think I've proven him wrong. It's just there's a lot of little ifs and whens in there, and I'll give it to you an example like this. If somebody wanted to tomorrow come to the city and submit a demolition permit for 94 King Street, we could designate that. We had 30 days or so to designate that building, so it doesn't have to be on the list. So
From process, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why there's
That's
always
where-
these
where there's a
conditions.
plan-
Yeah.
Yeah, where there's a
Yeah.
Planning Act application, yeah, no.
So there's what's, if you want to designate a building, you have to do a NOID, a Notice of Intent to Designate. So that procedure, I don't think requires listing initially. So the NOID is a 90-day period. So that notice goes out to the public, goes out to the property owners, published in a newspaper, et cetera, and then would be normally reviewed and supported by a Heritage Committee. Sometimes there's a Development Services Committee, then goes to council, and then there's that process has to be completed within 90 days, and then there's another 120-day appeal period or something like that after that. So it's complicated.
So the upshot then is that can we direct staff, or perhaps you, if you had time, to do research into these properties for potential designation without putting them on the list that would create the 2-year deadline? That's what I'm, can we
So-
unofficially perform this research with the intention of possibly designating them?
So the projects that I'm fighting at OLT with Markham, and Markham is very, they're an expert on this. They kind of started the process years ago. They create a statement of significance, which is usually a 2 or 3 page document, which is very similar to your LACAC. So the official term is a statement of significance. They provide a draft bylaw. They prepare a NOID. They send it out to the owners, that kind of thing, and then they move ahead so that they don't go to a list.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure what the significance is for us. I mean, I think we assumed that we had to
Yeah.
put these 2 properties on the list.
The purpose of listing a building was to allow a community to have additional time in the event that someone wanted to develop the property, demolish it, or what have you. So it was a way of just protecting it. So what you've done with the LACAC document is a similar thing. It's just not perhaps as official, and it precedes the listing legislation. So listing was a way to sort of, if anybody came in and said, hey, I want to apply for a demolition permit because the building was listed already, you could say, oh, hang on a second. Now we have our number of days before. Right, so that was the purpose of listing. So I don't think you need to list anything. If you want to start the process of designating 50 buildings, you could do that, but obviously there's some cost implications.
Can I get some feedback from the staff, like what your understanding of our next steps is in this case?
So firstly, let me remind the committee that you are an advisory committee, so anything that you do is a recommendation to council to whatever the process is. So I'm going to say that Davina and I are going to have to go back and read through all the things that we've prepared for you in terms of this, because Francis' point that we're not having to list it is contrary to what Davina and I understood. We understood that you have to list it on our municipal registry, which is basically our website, for a certain period, and then we were doing more research perhaps if we needed to make sure that it met all the criteria for designation. Again, that would be a recommendation then that council has to make, right? So I think we need to do a little bit more research to familiarize ourselves, to make sure we are doing the right process.
Okay, thank you. So we will shelve this particular motion and recommend more research be done into the process, and also that the committee should meet unofficially to talk through what we plan to do. The next things on the list are field trips, future projects. I don't think there's anything really, there aren't any motions to discuss around that. It was merely an informational, some of the things that we plan to focus on for the future. Doors Open, participating more fully in Doors Open, perhaps some walking tours, further cooperation with the Historical Society via George, and general sort of promotion. And yes, Kelly.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the city will be hosting a Doors Open event this year. It's scheduled for October the 4th. Staff in economic development are starting that process. We've registered with Doors Open, and they have reached out to a few places already, not necessarily heritage properties, but other properties. I haven't touched base with that staff person yet, but I will, because I do really like Doors Open myself. So I was going to say, if there was a connection that perhaps that staff person could come to a future committee meeting to talk about what they're envisioning, what properties and that, and if there was an opportunity for any of our designated properties to be on that tour as well.
Wonderful. Can we invite this person to our May meeting?
We can. I don't know how far along they will be still in May. Is still early for an October event, but I can certainly ask.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Anything anyone would like to bring forward at this point? No?
I would like
George.
to ask a question. The most recent historic plaque that I'm aware of that was erected was the one for Bleecker Ferry. Any idea what it costs from beginning to end to have a historic plaque placed somewhere? I looked around, checked Heritage Toronto, and I couldn't get a specific cost. How's that?
And so that was a historic plaque that the city put on this Bleecker.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
by the bridge.
I can ask economic development for an estimate on the cost. And bring that back to you next meeting.
Did you check plaques?
Me?
Yeah, you were going to go around and,
Oh, no, I.
oh, okay, you're busy.
Any other business?
I was just going to say that at our house, what we're proposing to do is, just for the community's information, the building was designated in 1985, and 98 years after it was built, and the plaque was provided to the homeowners at the time, and it sat on a shelf since when we bought the house in 2019, it was still there. So I think one of the first things we would say is that if a building is designated, the plaque should be installed.
Yeah.
As one rule. But then as well, the plaque doesn't say a lot. It just lists the name, the house, Fiddler House, the year was built, and the owner, or the builder, sorry. What we want to do is put up a larger plaque describing the previous owners, because there was several important, prominent people of the community that owned the house, and give a little history of the house, perhaps. And I thought you do see that in many communities where the plaque is call it the certificate, if you wish, of designation, but then a description of the property and why it's important. I think that would be really interesting as well. So.
Okay, any other business? No? Okay, I adjourn this meeting at 3:38. Oh, I move that we, I move that we adjourn the meeting at 3:38. Anyone seconding?
All right, I'll second.
Okay, George seconds. All in favor? Okay, thank you, everybody.